Hello there. Well, my name's Neil McArthur, and I'm the CEO of Freedom Fibre, an alternate network fibre to the premise provider. I'm here today with Richard Tang, founder, CEO of Zen Internet, and of course this is for Richard's YouTube channel. And today it's my turn to ask Richard some questions, and bounce back really from how we left it, some months ago. So during our last meeting, Richard, you asked me really for my opinions and ambitions, and particularly about the consolidation of the AltNet sector. So it's really nice to be back and swap seats.
Yeah, great. And look, Neil, I've got to say, this was Neil's idea, to come back and get his own back on me by asking me a load of tricky questions. I've not seen any of his questions, so fire away.
I don't think Richard will find these too tricky. He's been around the block here on this one. So I want to say a little bit about Richard first anyway, because Richard's the founder and CEO of Zen Internet. And it's the UK's largest B Corp certified telecommunications and technology service provider. Now that's a bit of a mouthful, but actually it's pretty important, and it shows the company's really commitment to a whole load of really important things, particularly on the people front. So recommended broadband provider for which multiple times really, which have recommended, and PC Pro's best provider for 20 consecutive years. That was a hell of a record, that, Richard. So I'm sure it's one you're very proud of. And funnily enough, we go back roughly to about the same amount of time in telecoms, because Richard started Zen in 1995 and we started Opel in 1996. In those days, it was just a handful of dial-up modems and get on with this new industry, wasn't it? Broadband, really. And the rise of the internet, of course, has been absolutely remarkable since those dial-up days into ADSL and through FTTC, and here we are now in FTTP. So Rich and I have really enjoyed a really good career being at the forefront of broadband industry that stretches back nearly 30 years now. And we've seen some pretty fundamental changes, as we've gone through, those years. Communications is pretty important, and it's been a pleasure really to work in the industry for that long. Anyway, Richard, you've been instrumental in challenging bad practice, really, upheld the importance of customer and employee satisfaction in this industry, and that's a real credit to you, really. And I guess the last thing I was just going to say to you, the focus you've put into Zen, and the ethos it's got, underpins the aspect of the service it provides. And, making right decisions for long-term success is crucial, and you can just see that that's where you've been with Zen, really. It's sustainability, the challenge of bad practices and all the things that you're known for is indeed, important. And Richard's, a real credit to our industry. So we've both been around for a long time, and here we are still at it in FTTP. The revolution's now underway, and I've got a lot of questions, but let's start with your view, Richard, on where we're at in the march towards full fibre broadband.
Well, first of all, thank you very much, Neil, for that introduction. The 2020s decade is the decade of full fibre. And interesting history, because full fibre wasn't always going to be the technology for this decade. It's very expensive to build, but I think this is a great example of free market competition working really well, with the AltNets, the competitors, and Openreach both vying for position. And so where are we now? We're at such an interesting period in the development of full fibre, and the AltNets like Freedom Fibre have done lots of building, and in this position now where consolidation is starting to happen. Some of the builders slowed down, some of the investors are getting nervous. They all are still looking forward to a big success over the next few years. And so in terms of where the UK will be, by the time we get to 2030, the vast majority of people in the UK will be enjoying full fibre, and not just 1 gigabit, but multi-gigabit full fibre as well. But how the industry will form over the next few years, real interesting times ahead in terms of how all the AltNets today, including Freedom Fibre, will end up joining together, merging, or being acquired or acquiring. So very interesting times. From a consumer point of view, the question will be how much choice will they end up having? Will it be a case where the majority of people still have only got one choice? Or as we're increasingly seeing with some of our customers, they're having 2 or 3 different choices of networks, which is very expensive to build, but again, it plays to this free market competition. One of the most interesting periods in the last 30 years in terms of the internet.
I know, we've waited 30 years for this, haven't we?
We have.
And it all arrives just when we're thinking we should be hanging our boots up. Oh, some of us anyway. You make a good point, though, there, Richard, because, Ofcom have made no secret of them wanting 3 national networks. So I'm going to voice an opinion here that really where I think it's going to end up, I think we will end up with the AltNets really forming that 3rd national network. How we get there is going to be certainly, very, very interesting. And it's going to have an impact, back to you. And I think there's a lot of challenges in our industry at present. And, as we migrate to fibre, I doubt most people realise the seismic shift in the industry, that we're in the middle of it. And I just wonder how that's starting to impact Zen.
So for Zen, I think, first of all, interesting to hear your view that all the AltNets will join to 1. I think my view is by the time we get to 2030, I'm thinking there'll be 2 or 3 still AltNets. So I think even AltNet to AltNet competition into the 2030s, I think is a good likelihood that you'll get further consolidation. And I think if it's AltNet to AltNet, I mentioned in a couple of recent presentations about the Competition and Markets Authority, would they take an interest? I think AltNet to AltNet, it would be difficult for them to veto that when they look at the size and scale of Openreach. And actually, if VMO2 and nexfibre, this partnership achieves its ambition, again, I think the AltNet thing would go ahead. But for Zen, the opportunity is huge in just in terms of partnering with the right AltNets and delivering full fibre service. So I've been quite open about Zen's ambition to partner with a select few AltNets. We're having discussions, including with yourselves, about possibilities, and I think that's the right thing to do. It's an interesting play for Zen because if you're right and all the AltNets merge into a single AltNet, and let's say we've integrated with 3, 4, 5 AltNets in that time, well, where does it leave us? Have we backed the right horses? Have we backed 4 horses that end up, we've done all that work, now we're just going to switch off the network because actually it's now a combined integration. And actually, my view is that won't be a waste of time because merging AltNets, first of all, doing a deal in the first place takes a long time. And then even when you've done the deal, you've still got 2 separate networks, you've got 2 separate sets of systems. They could take 6 months or a year to sort out and to merge. And all that time, if we're integrated to both, we can make hay while the sun shines. We can make the most of that opportunity rather than if we took the view, let's just wait till this consolidation all happens and sit back. And then we'll integrate right at the end, when it gets to like 2029. Well, we've missed the opportunity then. Yeah,
I think you're wise to take that, Richard. I was perhaps a little cavalier with using the word all AltNets will merge together because you're right. There's quite a lot of niche AltNets who've got a perfectly sustainable business model addressing a certain market sector. What I was really meaning was probably those AltNets that have laid themselves in a best position for geographical consolidation, and wholesale access. And you're right, you make the good point as well. Do you want to go off and build half a dozen IT stacks? But on the other hand, if you do nothing, it might just be too late. But, we've talked about this before, that there's a real responsibility with the AltNets to try and get their act together to make themselves look a little better organised for the ISP community. And, we've talked a lot about standards in the past. It's, I suppose, really, what can the AltNet community do for them, to help themselves, really, to make sure we attract the ISPs like Zen? Because if we don't, we've got quite a big problem, really.
Yeah. Two things, really. A compelling set of commercials to make it, you look at the numbers and you know what, that stacks up for us.
Yeah.
And that doesn't just mean you've got to be a huge network to make it stack up. Commercials can stack up for smaller networks. And then the other side of it is, I guess, just making the integration as easy as possible and making the API as standard as possible. Copy Openreaches, that's easy. Or copy for Zen, if the API looks like Openreaches or City Fibres, we've integrated to those APIs already. So if your API looks like one of those, then that makes it easier. If it looks different, it makes it a bit more difficult. Even so, even if it's a bit different, to be honest, what we're doing is we're provisioning broadband circuits, we're upgrading them, regrading them, downgrading them, and we're ceasing them. So, and we're logging faults. So actually, when you look at the things that we need to do, it is, you can't do much other than the standard stuff.
Right.
And I guess the other thing from our point of view, and we've discussed this quite a lot in our exco and at our board, is having that willingness to be a bit of the guinea pig, to accept that we're going to integrate with some of these AltNets, and it might be the first time that they've integrated with a scale ISP, and it's going to be rough around the edges. But hey, it was rough around the edges back in the 90s. Yeah. And
well,
that worked out okay.
You've raised two asks there. The first one was commercial. Well, we're giving it away already anyway, so that's boxes ticked. I think the point you raised really on the rest is one well made. Again, it's about standardisation, isn't it, and all the rest of it. And hopefully we'll get our act together. And certainly some consolidation started now, and that makes the jobs progressively easy, But here's a thought for you, really. So, given the wholesale market hasn't materialised for the AltNets, okay. And they've been investing massive amounts of money. There's something like 30 billion of capex on the table, which half of that is coming from the AltNets at the moment to build FTTP. Okay, so they're investing heavily in that, and it's forcing them, of course, to invest in retail businesses. Yeah. So a lot of AltNets now are investing massively in retail business because the wholesale market's not. And do you see that as a threat, an opportunity, a dynamic, or how do you see that?
Well, absolutely an opportunity, because those AltNets that are consolidating, and City Fibre is the best example, because they've been very open about it, and they acquired Lit Fibre. They're a wholesale AltNet, and in the press release of that acquisition, they said, I can't remember the exact words, but the retail ISP bit of Lit Fibre, they basically said, this isn't our business. Once we've done the integration, we'll have a think what to do with it. Yep. Meaning, we don't want it. Yeah. So there's a great opportunity. And you can imagine, I read that press release and thought, oh, there's an opportunity. I should have a chat with the City Fibre guys about that.
Well, all credit to Greg there, for standing by.
I did. I reached out. I reached out to City Fibre, and I said, well, what about this Lit Fibre base then? Shall we have a chat? and I think, for City Fibre, they are very acquisitive, and they're likely to acquire other AltNets with retail bases. And when they do, it's likely that we'll have a chat with them. Now, there's a lot of other suitors for those retail bases. Well, there's several other suitors, so, there will be competition. But as a retail ISP ourselves, we're very well suited to taking on these smaller bases.
Yeah, well, good for you on that.
Yeah. I mean, what about you? What's your view?
Well,
Neil?
as you know,
what can you say anything?
well, if you cut my arm off, it'd say two things. Wouldn't it say engineer, and it would say network wholesale, wouldn't it? You know, so and yet here we've gone and merged with VX Fibre and acquired a retail business in the middle of it. So we've got both. So and of course the way the industry's been set up in the UK is very different from Europe. In the UK, we believe in competition. And a free-for-all is the result of that, of course. So you get free market forces flowing. And so Ofcom's happy to let all these things run. And, you know, last time we spoke, Richard, we said, you know, is there a danger here we're going to have some train crashes? But actually, I think less so now than I thought a year ago about that, purely because the infra funds, rather than corporate investors, are involved this time, and they've got a bigger picture here. So I think they will probably shape the industry ahead of the train crashes. And so far, you know, the acquisitions and mergers that have been done have all been very orderly. And so may that continue for a long time, because I think there's a fair chance it might now. Well, let's move on to customers anyway. And that's all right.
Just before we go on, let's talk about train crashes a bit more, because I think the big threat in my mind is the Openreach build. So there's Openreach now. They've scaled up to 1 million premises a quarter, 4 million a year.
Yeah.
And every indication is that they'll continue doing that till they get to the 25 million. So, I mean, it's good to hear your view that the mergers and acquisitions have been orderly. I guess in my mind, I've got this vision of AltNet X is here.
Yeah.
You know, wanting to merge, wanted to be part of an acquisition. So there are, you know, negotiations are happening, and then you can imagine like the Openreach cavalry or infantry, marching to 10% overbuild, 20%, 30%, and by the time it's looking like a deal's done, 50 or 60% of that footprint's overbuilt. Everybody gets cold feet, and you're like, oh, that is going to be a train crash. I mean, or do you think I'm just too pessimistic?
It's a very good question. And now you're me. So where do I think?
I couldn't resist.
Well, I'm sorry. But, you know, we both spent our entire careers, you know, with BT dominating things. And we've always found a way of ducking and diving and finding a way through it, haven't we? And the day I can't compete with BT is definitely a day to call it quits, for sure. But no, I think that you know, Ofcom's got a very, very strong view. If you ask them privately, that they'd like to see at least 3 national networks to 85% of the country. One's going to be BT, one's going to be Liberty or Virgin, you'd expect, and the other, you know, is likely to be a collection of the bigger AltNets. You know, forming maybe there are a few other scenarios that could call out of that, but there's a fair chance it will be 3. And you know, would I like to be in BT's place at the moment? Well, they've been forced into this position by the AltNets. So Ofcom must be sat there thinking, oh, good job, well done there, wasn't it? So all the money's flowing in. But actually, you know, you've enjoyed the agreements on FTTC for several years, where they've been generously discounting it to force that horrible product they used to call fibre into everybody's homes. Okay, just to head off the FTTP charge, and of course it's had that impact. So I suppose BT were maybe right to do it. But they're now in a situation of owning 3 networks, aren't they? They've got an ADSL network, they've got an FTTC network, they've got this product called Sagia in the middle of it, you know, to sort out the whole legacy PSTN, and we better come on to that one as well, aren't we? And then there's FTTP. So, you know, they're running three networks, 4 completely different IT stacks. That isn't sustainable even for BT. Whereas a lot of the AltNets are just focused on fibre. So, you know, they should be able to get themselves in a better shape, get their act together, and then hopefully folks like you will think, oh, we can trade with these guys because they're going to make a difference. But actually, whatever happens, you're in a pretty good place, actually, aren't you?
I think we're in a great place.
You're going to end up with FTTP network, you know. No. But what do you think about the migration paths and the costs of going from across those networks, though?
To migrate from...
Yeah, from where you
FTTC.
You've paid to migrate to FTTC. You've paid to migrate to Sagia. You're going to pay again. Sounds like to me someone stacked the deck here.
Yeah, look, it's expensive to get people on full fibre. Less so with the AltNets than it is with Openreach.
Exactly.
But you still got to buy a new router, typically.
Yep.
That's expensive. And I think the good thing is because unlike the AltNets, we're debt free. We've got a business model that's organic and sustainable.
Yep.
And I suppose because we've got a market approach where we don't have to be the absolute cheapest to win business, we're good value for money, and you get the quality. Then the business model does stack up. So yes, we do have to take a financial hit at the upgrade point, but if that customer stays with us for the contract period, or typically 3, 4, 5 years, then it all stacks up in the long term. And I guess we've got the luxury of being able to take that long term view. But yes, it is definitely a topic of discussion at the board, at the Zen board, that FTTP is this huge opportunity, but it is costly to upgrade.
So what is on to customers then? Why are customers not taking FTTP up in the volumes that were expected, really? And I guess, what do customers truly think of it?
And I think it's due to a bit of inertia in the market, and so we see that a lot. If customers have got a service that works, then they just keep on using it, and look, if they can do what they need to do, it's almost they don't know what they're missing with the next level of
once
technology.
they've got it, they would never.
And once
back.
they got it, they don't want to go back.
No.
And I mean, you wouldn't believe how long we provided a dial-up service. You would have thought dial-up. That was dead and buried 20 years ago.
Yeah.
But oh no, and I think it's a similar thing with fibre to the cabinet. I mean, I had it myself at home, and I could do what I want to do. It's just as you said, you can do all the stuff you want to do. I can work from home. I can watch the films on Netflix and whatever, on Amazon Prime. And as soon as I got full fibre, I'm like, oh, this is much better. I'm glad I've got this.
And of course, we've not talked about B2B there, but you're talking about dial-up there, so that nicely brings us on to, we've got PSTN shutdown heading our way, haven't we? In early in 2025. Are you feeling we're ready for it? And what's the impacts on that from your perspective?
That is a big challenge. I think it's a big challenge for us in terms of switching everyone across. Consumers, it's easier. And with businesses, there are some challenges with all these different features. Do they all work with our digital voice offering? Most of them do, but there are teething problems. And then, of course, there's the UK-wide challenge of switching every single PSTN off. And the original goal was, I think, the end of 2025. Openreach have just conceded and said, no, you've got till January 2027 now to switch everything off, because things like the care lines, the panic alarms and things, it's just far from trivial to swap all those over, and they are life critical services. For us, it's the challenge of, I think particularly in B2B world, it is that challenge, and in our partner community as well, of getting out to every single customer, swapping them over to the latest technology. You've got to do it one at a time. And it's as I say, for a consumer line, it's pretty straightforward. You unplug your phone, you plug it into the router, it just works. But as soon as you've got multi-lines in a business, as soon as you're using it for special applications, of which our enterprise customers use it for quite a bit, it's one-to-one work.
Well, this means another couple of years for WLR and all those dodgy PSTN products, doesn't it?
Well, absolutely. And, some of our competitors are actually encouraging customers to stay with WLR, because actually WLR will switch off, but MPF will go on for longer. So they say if you want to keep your copper lines, sign up with us. You can have your MPF lines till 2030 and beyond.
Well, you're making me smile now because, of course, we used, in my Talk days, we used MPF to build the network.
Well, you did indeed.
So it was good. On a similar vein, but a little bit back to broadband, really, we're getting close to the deadline for one-touch switching as well, aren't we? And, what's the impact that you think this will have on uptake, and what's the preparation going on in Zen for it all?
So one-touch switching has been massive within Zen. So we took the March deadline very seriously. We got a pretty sizable software development team within Zen, and it used up multiple teams of software developers for multiple months for us to get ready for that March deadline. And just as the deadline was approaching,
it moved.
Ofcom and Tosco moved it back. I mean, very reluctantly, moved it back to September. So we're ready. We're testing now. I do think that in terms of impact on the business, I think it will be beneficial for Zen, because I think on the whole customers like our service, and so if they can switch to it more easily from competitor services, that will be more of a benefit than the downside of customers who want to switch away from.
Well, you've got a loyal base and a good name, Richard.
But I do think that coming back to these small retail bases of the AltNets, then we're quite a mature business compared to a lot of the smaller AltNets, and so I can just imagine the challenge for them of getting one-touch switching all sorted out and tested by the September day. I imagine there are boards out there that are actually a little bit nervous about doing that on time.
You're taking it for granted, of course, that all AltNets come out the telecoms industry. And, I've been fortunate, spending the years I did, on both sides of this fence, really, with Talk. And so I see it. But you're right, it's not without its challenges that on there. So just switching a little bit there. So, really educating people, though, and the rest of it. I know we educate people with marketing events and industry forums and that. I don't know how you see the AltNets doing their part and the other ISPs really playing their part in ensuring that we really support, I guess the community out there, and particularly on things like social equality and the things that are quite close to your heart.
Well, this comes back to fundamental reasons for existence. For Zen, doing the right thing for people, doing the right thing for the environment, putting people and the environment first, with money as something that is critically important, but really just a means to an end to drive our people and environment-centric purpose. I'd love to see more businesses do that. And then the B Corp movement is a good example of lots of businesses like-minded thinking, we need to make a difference because this is the future of society, the future of the environment at stake. I'd like to see more businesses become B Corps, or if that's too much of a stretch, at least take on some of the values and exhibit some of the behaviours. This business exists for the betterment of society and the environment, not just to make a select few individuals obscenely rich at the expense of everyone else. And I'm not just talking about our industry, but the capitalist world generally.
And of course, our industry, I often say this to people, our industry is not small, telecoms industry is not small, but equally it's not absolutely colossal and huge. But the impact it has on both on the economy, and the community and the social access in the country is absolutely colossal. And I guess that's why we've got a regulator at the end of the day to make sure it's there and it's fair and it's reasonable and it delivers that service. And I think we've got a pretty good balance in the UK. I think Ofcom's had its moments where things haven't all gone great, but generally I think we've had a well-regulated industry. It's the chaos in which we operate, though. This free market can occasionally be a little bit frustrating when you rock up somewhere to build fibre and somebody's there ahead of you and there's somebody queuing up behind you because they didn't know you were there, and you can't share data and all that kind of stuff. So there's some frustrations, but I got to say, I think we will end up by 2030-ish, with most of this country having a full fibre to most of its far corners. And if we do that, I think that'll be a pretty good effort, don't you?
I do. Yeah. Actually, I want to come back to something you said earlier about the consolidation.
Yeah.
And you were saying about, Openreach, VMO2, nexfibre, and then this joined together AltNets. Now, VMO2 have created this
nexfibre.
Well, they've got nexfibre, and then they've got this netco as well. Basically, both nexfibre and VMO2 are both saying we are on the acquisition trail.
Yeah.
And I just wondered, could you imagine, rather than the AltNets joining together, actually VMO2 and nexfibre between them, they're the ones that start hoovering up.
Well,
what do you think? Would they hoover Freedom Fibre up? I know you're doing the interview, but I can't resist.
Well, I'm not for being hoovered at the moment, quite frankly. But no, what I would say about that, I think there's some challenges with that. When you're trying to build a business on the scale that they've got to, and what they've got to address in terms of escaping from hybrid copper as well. Buying some companies, might make sense if the deal really makes sense. But they're not going to pay top dollar for it, because what you don't get when you integrate networks is, a homogeneous network. And I mean, we've got it at the moment. We've just merged with VX Fibre, and it's going to take us 12 months to make that network look like one, and it deliver the entire suite of products seamlessly across the pitch. And, this comes back to the point you were saying, you want to trade with AltNets, but you also want to offer your customers the same products, whether it's consumer or business, and the same levels of service across the entire country, really. And so to get to that point, and they'll have that challenge. So then buying 10 companies, remember the 90s when all the cable companies came together? Well, they're still trying to figure out where some of the network is today. It's not an easy thing to do. And of course, you've got all the issues of IT and the rest of it. I mean, at least with the UK, virtually every one of the AltNets has, converged on using XGS-PON. And that's great for delivery of the products and the unification of products and services, and it's pretty good at integrating the networks together. Of course, that doesn't quite sort out all the OSS stack and the operational services, the operational processes, the way they flow through. So there's some big challenges when you start buying companies, and I'm just thinking back to the days working with Charles and the team at TalkTalk when we merged 10 companies together in a few years, and wow, you end up with a lot of dodgy assets and quite a lot of strange IT. So there's some challenges there, and the industry's going to go through that. But if you look what's going on, even with the big ISPs at the moment, Sky, TalkTalk, Oda, yourselves, you've all got ADSL stacks. You've still got PSTN services. You've got FTTC. You're probably going to have to do Sagia. And here we are trying to get you to get enthused about FTTP. Yeah. So the industry is in quite a stressed state at the moment, and I think it's doing a pretty good job. But wouldn't it be great? In 10 years' time, when everybody's going, no, we need to do fibre, make a big change, won't it, really?
Because, we're still selling ADSL today. Zen is still selling it. Not to very many people, and our base is declining, but we've still got a base that we support. And there are still places that can't get anything apart from ADSL, believe it or not.
Yeah, well, it'll be some while yet. So, anyway, just with time to press it, I just thought moving on and looking at future ambitions a little bit. So last time we joked about the miscommunication around fibre, really, and the politics around it. And interesting, we've got an up-and-coming general election again, and I just wondered if you had any concerns. I still remember the ghost of Rebecca Long-Bailey, on the nationalisation of Openreach, in the belief that they provided broadband, which was quite humorous, but had quite a serious edge to it, I seem to recall. I don't know about you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I did say something at the ISPA conference earlier this year about that. And that the whole idea from Labour of free broadband for all, it was an 11th hour tactic. And I could just imagine someone, some group of politicians, Labour politicians in London, behind on the polls, scratching around, what can we do that's sensational to get a few more votes? And then someone like, just pull this, well, how about free broadband for the nation? That should get people excited. Oh my goodness. And then when you looked in the detail, well, there was no detail. Wow. Really, there was no detail. So my thoughts are, and this is just not for Labour, for any political party, don't go pulling ridiculous election stunts just to get votes. Yeah. If you want to seriously consider an entry-level free broadband for the whole nation, talk to the industry first, so you actually know what you're talking about. Yeah. Because I asked our local Labour MP to visit our office here, which he did, and I said, well, what's all this about this free broadband for all then that your party is pulled out of the bag? He said, I don't know anything about it.
Well,
Richard, I said, is the government going to buy Zen out then? Oh, no. Just it's only going to be Openreach. I'm like, well, what are you going to do about Zen customers? Are you going to compete with Zen then? Public sector competing with private sector? And he was like, I've got no idea. And you only need to go like 2 steps to discover that there's just been no thought whatsoever. So please, if you're a politician thinking about free broadband for all, then just talk to industry and get, do a proper business case.
Well, we laugh about
I'll leave it out of that.
It was pretty serious for us because we just done the deal to merge Fibre Nation into City Fibre, and I was actually on an aeroplane off on my holidays, and I was on the plane talking to Anne. I says, "Well, we'll pop a cork when we get to the end of this. Deal done, all finished. Only to land to get the news about the broadband. Deal was put off till after the election." You're down here. Anyway, but the point you've made really in the middle of that is if government really wants to do something special about broadband, then it should knuckle down and do it something with industry. And of course, the starting point with all social tariffing has to be 20% VAT. Sounds a little bit rich for something that's essential in the social world. That sounds like a luxury good tariff to me. So whenever politicians collar me on social tariffs, that's the starting point. Why do you tax it so highly then?
Well, fibre tax, the other thing that always puzzled me as well, fibre tax. So the government want the UK to move from copper to fibre, but with fibre, you got to pay tax on it. A copper, you don't pay tax.
I actually think the fix for this is that if they're going to keep the taxes the way they are, then they should give the money to the local authorities to push out for the social inclusion agenda much heavier. And but like yourself, we still do get involved with social programs, and they are very rewarding for staff, and the company gets a warm feeling as well when you do it. So, but if you're going to do it on a national scale, I think I'm with you. Okay, so I think it's probably time we actually wrapped up here. So. It's nearly time to wrap up, and I'd just really like to say that I think that the UK is in a really pretty good place. We've got over 50% of the country now with full fibre. We've got 30 billion of committed capital in play, and the task of full fibre, to virtually all the UK is underway. And just to say, a plug really for government on the gigabit programmes. We've not had time to talk about them today, but that programme has been seriously getting its sleeves rolled up on delivery to make sure we get those rural areas. And as you just touched on, early on, we're doing 2 of those programmes in Cheshire and Shropshire, and they've been well thought through. And it's been actually really good to see a government programme so well thought through, and it's underspent, so that's good at the moment. So there's a lot, but there's still a lot to do really in that. Anyway, I'd just like to say a big thank you to Richard really for giving me the opportunity to visit today and spend. Well, I'll be a few hours here now because I'm sure we're going to carry on. I've really enjoyed it, and what next for the next 30 years, Richard?
Well, I think that'll be the topic for another get together.
Okay.
But thanks very much for watching. Huge thanks, Neil, for all your questions and for this great chat. And see you again soon.
Thank you.